We dwell in a sphere where a like, a note, or a view has turned into the coinage of our self-esteem. We show a picture, we pause, we give an idea, we wish, we take action, we glance about to check who's applauding, and when nobody is applauding, we cease moving. Someplace down the line, we've persuaded ourselves that unless somebody backs what we're achieving, it must not be decent enough. But here's the reality that's hard to take. Pursuing fixed backing is the quickest avenue to misplace sight of what truly counts. We weren't shaped this way. Offspring don't need praise to examine. They don't await consent to be wondering. They simply act. They follow winged creatures. They erect columns out of squares. They put endless queries, not since anyone guided them to, but since it's in their form to ponder, to craft, to seek what thrills them. The need for outward support slips in after when we begin gaining that praise, and hush is a penalty. But the most vital work in life isn't always noisy. It doesn't always get likes. Indeed, often the work that counts most is done in hush. Consider the finest scholars, creators, artists. They didn't show to be favored. They showed since they trusted in a thing bigger than themselves. They acted from a deep sense of aim, not a yearning for praise. And that's the contrast. When you act from aim, you erect strength. When you act for backing, you erect reliance. And reliance is weak. Since the instant people cease applauding, you cease moving. You start to diminish, you start to question, you start to draw back. Not since your work isn't worthy, since it wasn't directly backed. The irony is that the sphere doesn't need more people following praise. It needs more people who are keen to show steadily even when nobody is watching. It needs people who do the hard, unglamorous work, people who stay true to the mission, not the metrics. And that kind of consistency, that kind of aim can't be erected on the shifting sands of outward support. So why do we follow backing? Since it feels decent. It's a quick hit of dopamine, it's habit forming. But that high wears off, and then we need more of it to feel worthy. We check our phones, revive our mailboxes, reread old notes, wishing to feel seen again. And while we're caught doing that, we're not erecting anything. We're not growing. We're simply reacting, wishing someone somewhere will give us a reason to keep going. What if instead of following backing, we followed truth? What if we measured our days not by the input we took, but by the effort we gave, by the honor we held? What if we showed and did the work simply since it was the decent thing to do, not since it would make us known? The people who make the biggest impact aren't always the ones in the spotlight. They're the ones in the trenches, doing the work that counts even when nobody is applauding. They're the ones who stay late, who put finer queries, who challenge the state, not to be noted, but to make things finer. They're not awaiting consent to lead. They're not awaiting likes to speak. They know who they are, and they act from that place, not from the worry of being ignored. I get it. It's hard. It's hard to put yourself out there and hear nothing back. It's hard to show again and again when it feels like nobody cares. But the truth is, people are watching. It's simply not always the people you think. Someone is paying focus. Someone is being stirred by your consistency, by your bravery, by your refusal to quit. You don't always get to see the impact you're making, but that doesn't mean it's not real. Imagine what you could erect if you ceased awaiting applause. Imagine what you could craft if you trusted yourself enough to keep going. The applause will come or it won't, but either way, it's beside the point, since you're not doing it for that. You're doing it for the mission. You're doing it for the people who need what only you can give. You're doing it since you can't not do it. That's the shift. Celebrate it from performing to serving, from following praise to pursuing aim. And when you make that shift, everything shifts. Your worry quiets down, your vision sharpens, your sense of self solidifies. You cease bending yourself to fit what others want, and you start standing tall in what you trust. You cease asking, "Do they favor me?" and start asking, "Is this helpful? Is this true? Is this what I was made to do?" And that's not pride, that's clarity. Clarity isn't noisy, it's steady. It doesn't need applause to breathe. It simply needs action. Quiet, consistent, purpose-driven action. So the next instant you catch yourself reviving a feed, checking for notes, rereading input, wishing to feel seen, pause, breathe, remind yourself why you started in the first place. Remind yourself that your worth doesn't rise with likes, and it doesn't diminish with hush, and it simply is. And from that place, that steady place, get back to work. Since the sphere doesn't need more people performing, it needs more people showing with aim. It needs more people like you, but only if you cease awaiting for them to clap. This snare that almost all of us fall into. It seems like effort, it feels like motion, but it gets us nowhere. We fill our calendars, check off tasks, answer emails, sit in meetings, shuffle papers, stay up late, and we call it work. We call it progress. We call it productivity. But deep down, we know something's missing, something important. Since busy doesn't always mean helpful, motion isn't the same as progress, is the contrast between doing a lot and doing what counts. Now, most people don't burn out from toiling too hard. They burn out from toiling on the wrong things, from filling their days with low-impact tasks that seem grand but move nothing forward. It's simple to mistake being busy for being worthy. We've erected a culture that rewards hustle, even if it's aimless. We praise the person who replies fastest, not the one who thinks deepest. We admire the full schedule, not the clear intention. But at the close of the day, if all your effort leads nowhere, does it even count? We mix up action with intention, and that's dangerous. Since when we don't pause to ask why we're doing something, we can spend years climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. We optimize systems that shouldn't exist. We refine tasks that never needed to be done in the first place. And we wonder why we're exhausted and unfulfilled. We dwell in an age where being productive has turned into a performance. There's almost a pressure to seem swamped, as if that somehow proves our importance. But there's nothing admirable about being busy for the sake of being busy. True leaders, true builders, don't mix up effort with effectiveness. They pause, they reflect, they put finer queries. They don't simply do more. They do what counts most. Ask yourself how much of your day is spent on things that actually move the mission forward. Not things that keep you taken, not things that impress others, but things that truly craft value. It's a tough query since it forces us to get honest, and honesty is uncomfortable. It means admitting that some of the things we've clung to are distractions in disguise. It means recognizing that maybe we've been toiling hard on the wrong problem. And here's the uncomfortable truth. We often fill our time with busy work to shun the work that really scares us. The deep thinking, the bold decision, the honest conversation, the creative leap, the silence. Busy work turns into a shield. It gives us the illusion of control, of contribution, of movement. But the most vital work often isn't visible. It's not urgent. It doesn't come with a notification or a deadline. It requires courage, not simply stamina. There's a reason why some of the most powerful breakthroughs come in stillness. Clarity doesn't shout. Insight doesn't dwell in the noise. It comes when we pause long enough to ask, what's the real problem here? What's the goal? What truly counts? These aren't queries you can answer while multitasking. They require depth. They require space. But most of us are too busy to make room for them. And yet, the people who make a real difference in the sphere aren't the busiest. They're the most focused. They know what to say no to. They're not afraid to disappoint in the short term to stay aligned in the long term. They don't need to be everywhere because they know where they're needed most. That kind of clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from choosing finer. So how do we cease wasting time on busy work? We start by redefining what productivity means. It's not about how many tasks you complete. It's about how much value you craft. It's not about being the first to respond. It's about being the one who sees clearly. It's not about volume. It's about direction. Real productivity begins with aim. When you know your why, your what turns clearer. When you understand the mission, you cease mistaking motion for momentum. Every task turns into a choice. Every decision turns into a filter. Does this help me serve the mission? Does this solve a real problem? If not, maybe it's time to cease doing it, no matter how satisfying it feels to check it off. Leaders, creators, dreamers, you weren't made to be efficient machines. You were made to build, to solve, to connect, to lead. That kind of work is messy, it's unpredictable, it's not always fast, but it's real and it's worth it. Don't let the pressure to seem busy pull you away from the work that truly counts. You can always fill your day. The sphere will give you 1,000 tasks if you let it. But is that you only have so much energy, so much focus, so much life. Spend it wisely. Spend it on things that leave a mark. Spend it on work that makes someone's life finer. Spend it on the kind of work you'll be proud of, even if nobody sees it. Since at the close of the day, the people who craft real shift aren't the ones who check the most boxes. They're the ones who erected a thing that mattered. They're the ones who paused long enough to put finer queries. They're the ones who knew that being helpful is always more vital than being busy. So pause, breathe, zoom out. Look at your day, your week, your month. Are you making noise or are you making progress? Are you spinning wheels or are you moving forward? Don't mix up the two, since your time is too precious to spend it seeming productive. You were meant to be productive in the true sense of the word. You are meant to erect what counts. We tell ourselves we're being watchful. We call it preparation, due diligence, being accountable. But in reality, we're stuck in our own heads, stuck replaying possibilities, stuck analyzing every outcome, every angle, every variable, and doing nothing. We disguise our worry as strategy. We hide behind research. We overthink, not since we're searching for truth, but since we're shunning risk. And that right there is the real danger. Since while we're caught trying to make the perfect decision, we make no decision at all. Overthinking is a clever enemy. It whispers all the right things. Simply a little more data. A wait for the timing to be right. Think it through again, simply. And before we know it, we've erected a fortress of hesitation around ourselves. We've mixed up clarity with certainty. But clarity doesn't always show fully formed. Most of the time, it reveals itself through movement. You don't get belief first and then act. You act first, and belief follows. The people we admire most, the ones who erected a thing meaningful, who led others, who sparked shift, they didn't have perfect plans. They had conviction. They had a willingness to move. They didn't await until every piece was in place, since they knew it never would be. They started when it was uncomfortable, when the path was unclear, when the risk was real. Since they understood a thing most of us forget: momentum counts more than mastery. Overthinking is a form of resistance. It tells us that if we simply await a little longer, we'll feel more ready. But readiness is rarely a feeling. It's a decision, a mindset. The truth is, you don't need more time. You need more trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in your instincts. Trust that if you get it wrong, you'll gain something, and that lesson will be more valuable than any amount of speculation. We don't gain by standing still. We gain by doing, by experimenting, by making a move and watching what happens. Yet, we treat every decision like it's permanent, like it will define us forever. It won't. Most decisions aren't final. Most can be adjusted, refined, reversed. But you can't adjust a decision you never made. You can't steer a car that isn't moving. Action is where clarity dwells. Action reveals what thought alone can. You can plan for months and still miss the mark. Or you can move today and gain in hours what thinking couldn't teach you in weeks. The longer you sit with a decision, the heavier it feels. Not since it's more complex, but since you've let worry grow in the silence. And worry always fills the space where bravery should have spoken. You want to erect a thing meaningful? Then get cozy with imperfect action. Not reckless, not thoughtless, but imperfect. Since perfect is a myth. It's a moving target that keeps you paralyzed. It's the reason dreams die in notebooks, why ideas collect dust, why teams stall. Perfection is the enemy of execution, and overthinking is its accomplice. The sphere doesn't need more perfectly laid out plan. It needs more people keen to take the first imperfect step. It needs people who say, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm going anyway. That's how innovation happens. That's how leadership happens. That's how shift begins. The mistake we make is thinking every decision defines us. But most decisions are simply steps, not destinations. One choice doesn't write your whole story. It simply turns the page. If it's the wrong page, turn again. But don't stand there holding the pen, afraid to write a word. And it's not simply personal either. Organizations do this, teams do this. We gather in meetings, we debate endlessly, we shun risk under the banner of analysis, we drown decent ideas in process. And while we're doing that, someone else is out there testing, failing, iterating, gaining, winning. Speed matters. Not speed at the cost of thoughtfulness, but speed at the cost of worry. Make the decision, launch the project, have the conversations, start the thing. Since doing leads to discovering, and discovery will always teach you more than theory. We think the goal is to be right, but it's not. The goal is to grow, and you grow by doing. The irony is, the longer we overthink, the more we persuade ourselves the risk is growing, when actually the real risk is doing nothing. The risk is staying stuck. The risk is turning into someone who talks about potential, but never lives it. The risk is reaching the close of a year or a decade or a lifetime and realizing you were too watchful with your own gift. If you want to lead, you have to move. People don't follow hesitation, they follow motion, they follow bravery, they follow clarity, even if it's still a little messy. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about having enough conviction to go first, to try, to gain, to adjust, to keep going. So what are you overthinking right now? What's the decision that's been sitting in your mind awaiting for the right instant? Here's a thing most people won't tell you. There is no right instant. There's only now. And now is enough. Now is where everything starts. Not since you're fully ready, but since you awaited long enough. You've thought enough, you've prepared enough, you've questioned enough. It's time to trust. It's time to move, since the only avenue to get unstuck is to take a step. And even if it's the wrong one, it's still finer than standing still, since at least now you're in motion, and motion beats overthinking every time. We don't start out comparing. No child glances about the playground wondering if they're running faster than the others. They run since it feels decent to run. They climb since they're wondering, not since someone else is climbing higher. But someplace down the line, we're taught to measure ourselves against everyone else. We're told to keep up, to compete, to watch what others are doing. And suddenly, the joy of running gets replaced by the pressure to win a race we never agreed to run. Comparison is subtle. It's not noisy. It sneaks in quietly. You scroll through your feed and see someone landing a promotion, launching a business, traveling the sphere, buying a home. And before you even realize it, your brain isn't celebrating their success. It's using it as a measuring stick for your own worth. We look at where they are, and instead of being stirred, we feel behind. But behind what? According to whose timeline? That's the thing. We never pause to ask where this imaginary race is even going. We simply run faster, we push harder, we tell ourselves we're late, that we've missed something, that we're not doing enough. And in all that noise, we forget the most vital thing. Our path is not their path. Our pace is not their pace. And that's not a weakness. It's the very thing that makes our journey ours. The truth is, nobody has your context. Nobody sees the full picture of your life. Not even those closest to you. They don't see the battles you're fighting, the values that guide you, the goals that matter to you, the sacrifices you're making. So why do we compare ourselves to people who are living a completely different story? We measure their highlight reel against our behind-the-scenes footage and call it failure. We see their peak and compare it to our process. But what you don't see in someone else's success is the struggle it took to get there. You don't see the late nights, the doubts, the dead ends, the starts and stops. You don't see the cost. You only see the outcome. And comparison doesn't simply rob you of joy, it robs you of perspective. It's a finer way, a more honest way. Instead of asking, where are they, we ask, where am I? Instead of asking what do they have, we ask what do I value? Instead of asking why don't I have that, we ask am I building what matters to me? Since progress isn't about being ahead, it's about being aligned. Alignment is powerful. When you're aligned, you cease rushing, you cease forcing. You start building a thing that fits, a thing that feels like you. You stop looking sideways and start looking inward. And when you live from that place, from your own center, everything shifts. The pressure lifts, the clarity returns. You remember why you started in the first place. Since let's be honest, comparison isn't simply exhausting, it's distracting. You can't focus on your craft while you're obsessing over someone else's journey. You can't find your voice if you're constantly listening to theirs. You can't erect a thing original if you're simply following what already exists. Innovation requires presence, it requires stillness, it requires bravery, and comparison kills all three. The goal isn't to be finer than someone else. It's to be finer than you were yesterday, to refine your process, to deepen your impact, to stay rooted in your values even when the sphere tries to pull you in every direction. Since the people who truly succeed, not simply in work but in life, are the ones who know how to stay in their own lane. They run their race, they trust their timing. They don't need to prove anything since they're already persuaded of their aim. And that's what you need. Not more support, not more achievements, not more comparison, but more conviction. Conviction in your why, conviction in your values, conviction in the path you've chosen. When you have that, the noise fades, the pressure eases, the temptation to compare loses its grip. We all feel it though, let's not pretend otherwise. There are instances when someone else's success hits something tender in us, and that's okay. That doesn't make you weak, that makes you human. But you don't have to stay there. You don't have to dwell in that space. You can feel the sting of comparison and still choose clarity, still choose compassion, still choose progress. When you celebrate someone else's win, you're not losing, you're practicing abundance. You're building the kind of mindset that crafts real success. Since real success isn't erected on resentment, it's erected on aim. It's erected on knowing who you are, what you value, and what you're here to erect. And when you truly know that, you don't need to race anyone. You simply need to keep walking. So cease looking around, start looking within. Stop following someone else's dream and start honoring your own. Since this isn't a competition, it's a journey, and nobody else can walk yours. Nobody else can erect what you're meant to erect. Nobody else can lead the avenue you're wired to lead. The greatest leaders, the most impactful creators, the people we remember, they weren't the fastest or the flashiest. They were the most faithful. Faithful to their mission, faithful to their process, faithful to the work. That's what made the contrast. Comparison will always be there, but it doesn't have to win. You can see someone else's success and still trust in your own. You can cheer them on and keep building what matters to you, since their win doesn't diminish your worth. It doesn't delay your destiny. It doesn't disqualify your effort. Stay in your lane, trust your process, own your story. You are not behind. You are turning into, and that is always enough. But we all want to be favored. It's human. We want connection. We want to feel accepted. We want to know we belong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's part of who we are. But there's a contrast between seeking connection and following approval. There's a contrast between being kind and being a chameleon. At some point, if you're always trying to make everyone happy, you stop being you. The hard truth is, not everyone will understand you.
Not everyone will agree with you. Not everyone will favor the choices you make, the boundaries you set, the dreams you follow. And that's okay. You're not here to fit into everyone's expectations. You're here to live your life with aim. And aim doesn't come from popularity. It comes from clarity. So when you live to please others, you end up betraying yourself. You say yes when you mean no. You nod when you want to speak up. You follow paths that seem safe instead of ones that feel right. And the worst part is, you don't even realize it's happening. You think you're being generous. You think you're keeping the peace. But over time, you lose your voice. You lose your boundaries. You lose your center. The people who make the biggest difference in the sphere are rarely the most agreeable. They're not trying to please the crowd. They're trying to serve the mission. And serving the mission means making hard calls. It means choosing values over validation. It means standing firm even when it's unpopular. There's a myth we've bought into that being favored equals being decent. But some of the best leaders, the most courageous artists, the most transformative thinkers, they were misunderstood, criticized, even rejected. And yet they stayed true to what they trusted, since they understood a thing powerful. Being respected is finer than being favored, and being trusted is finer than being accepted by everyone. Trying to please everyone is exhausting. It's a full-time job with no vacation and no reward. You can bend over backwards, say all the right things, play it safe, and still someone will be disappointed. That's not a reflection of your failure. That's a reflection of the fact that people have different values, different lenses, different needs. You can't carry the weight of all of them, and you weren't meant to. Leadership. Real leadership isn't about keeping people happy. It's about guiding people toward what counts. That means taking a stand. That means setting boundaries. That means choosing what's right over what's simple. And yes, that means disappointing people sometimes. But here's the beauty of it. When you stop trying to please everyone, you start attracting the right people. People who respect your honesty, who align with your vision, who value your courage. You stop blending in and start standing out. Not since you're louder, but since you're more real. And authenticity is magnetic. People may not always agree with you, but they'll know where you stand, and that builds trust. The problem with people-pleasing is that I ask you to turn into a shapeshifter. You mold yourself into whatever people expect. But you can't erect a thing lasting on a foundation that's always shifting. Identity counts, values count, consistency counts. If you're constantly editing yourself to fit the room, how will anyone ever see the real you? You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be defiant, but you do have to be clear. Clear about your yes, clear about your no, clear about your priorities. Clarity is one of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself and to others. Since clarity cuts through confusion, it eliminates false expectations. It frees you from the burden of trying to be everything to everyone. And it's not about being selfish, it's about being self-aware. Knowing who you are, knowing what you trust, knowing where you're going, and being keen to stay the course even when others don't get it. Especially when others don't get it. Since if you keep following approval, you'll never find peace. But if you follow aim, peace often finds you. There's something liberating that happens when you realize you don't have to persuade everyone.
You don't have to win them all over. You simply have to be consistent, true to your word, true to your values. And those who are meant to walk with you, they'll walk with you. Not since you adjusted yourself to meet their expectations, but since they saw something true in you. You can't erect trust on pretense. You can't lead from a place of worry. The courage to say, this is who I am, this is what I trust, and this is what I'm here to do, that's what earns respect. That's what lasts. So stop apologizing for your conviction. Stop softening your voice so others can stay cozy. Stop diluting your message so you won't ruffle feathers. The sphere doesn't need more authentic people. It needs more authentic people. It needs people who are brave enough to be themselves, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You're not here to be favored by everyone. You're here to serve, to lead, to build, to speak, to live with integrity. And that will always require you to disappoint someone. The query is, would you rather disappoint others by being yourself or disappoint yourself by pretending to be someone you're not? Your energy is too valuable to spend it on constant approval seeking. Your potential is too great to waste it fitting into boxes that were never designed for you. It's the people you're meant to impact. They don't need a watered-down version of you. They need the full, honest, aligned version, the version that stands for something. So take the pressure off. You don't have to make everyone happy. You simply have to be faithful to what you know is right. Be kind, yes. Be empathetic always, but don't trade your truth for someone else's comfort. That's not compassion, that's compromise. And when you live in constant compromise, you never get to experience the freedom of being fully alive. Not everyone will get it, not everyone will favor it, but that's not the goal. The goal is to walk with aim, to speak with conviction, to live with integrity, and to leave a mark that was never dependent on applause, but always rooted in truth.